If you remember, these are basic logical notions that we did at the beginning. This is from the first chapter. What we did was to define these notions informally. What I want to do at this moment is to convince you that this is not good enough. Here at the beginning, the definition of validity. An argument is valid if it is impossible for the premises to be true and the conclusion false. Now this looks tidy, this looks very precise, but actually we do have some imprecise and vague words. That the key word, impossibility, is such a word. There are some other things as well, but this one is the most important. Everything depends on this notion impossible. And such definitions in logic rely on what is usually called modal notions. Possibility, impossibility are modal notions. Necessity is also modal notion, and statements that say that something must be or that something cannot be the case are also called modal statements. And modal notions are vague. What we can do and what we usually do is to find some relation between them and say that what is necessary is impossible to be false, or what is impossible, then its negation is necessarily false, and things like that. But saying that something cannot be can mean different things. For example, be and not be is something that cannot be the case. We cannot have an explicit contradiction, and this is a good example of something that is impossible. But we also say that nothing can travel faster than light. Now, what is this about? It's not exactly an explicit contradiction. If there is a contradiction, then it's a contradiction relative to the laws of physics. And we can have things that cannot be, but relative to some other laws, biological laws. So you cannot live at a place where it's too hot. You will die, or a plant cannot live without water, or psychologically you cannot change all your habits during one day, and things like that. They seem to be impossible, but in a way which is weaker than the first one that we mentioned, which is explicit contradiction. Then we can say you cannot leave the palace, the door is locked, which is still a weaker sense of impossibility. You cannot promise to come and then stay at home. Well, of course, you can come physically, biologically, psychologically, but in a moral sense, that would not be fair. You cannot castle when your king is in check. This is maybe close to the first one, that is close to explicit contradiction relative to the rules of check. But in another sense, physically, of course, I can arrange the figures wherever I want them. So, in that sense, this is not really an impossibility. Or the butler cannot be the murderer. Why? The evidence shows that he's innocent. And things like that. So, there is lots of vagueness in that notion. And we are doing logic, and we are promised to have something more firm, more precise. And we see that the key notions are not so precise at all. So in other books, people try to do something else. For example, do you see another textbook now? It says an argument is valid if and only if. And now we have some suggestions. It is impossible to consistently both accept the premises and reject the conclusion. Okay, we have the same word impossible here and the same problems that go with that. And we have additional problems that we have a mixture of metaphysical and epistemological concepts like accept and reject. What I can or cannot accept and reject might depend on my psychology, my cognitive abilities, my character, maybe. And we want something more objective than that. The second suggestion is the one that we have in our textbook. The third says an argument is valid if and only if the premises, if true, would necessarily make the conclusion true. That's okay. We have a necessity instead of impossibility, but this leads us to all the same problems we had with impossibility. And there is another thing that is not convenient. We have this making, which associates of causation as if we had some causation between statements. This is not a fortunate way to formulate things. Then the conclusion is true in every imaginable scenario in which the premises are true. This is another way which might be useful if it was developed, but there's lots of work to develop this. And again, we have mixture with epistemic notions. What is imaginable? Can we have some link between what is possible and imaginable? Throughout history, people believe the law that there is a connection between possibility and conceivability. That conceivability is a certain sign that something is possible. If I can conceive of something, then that thing must be possible. And if something is impossible to conceive, then objectively, metaphysically, that thing is impossible. You can see huge amount of key arguments in Plato, in Aristotle, in Hume, and it's in the 20th century that we shed lots of doubt on that connection between conceivability and possibility. We don't think that it is so reliable anymore. But historically, this connection was trusted very often. Anyway, we have a problem here with this proposal how to define validity. We have the connection between impossibility and imaginability, and it will take huge amount of work to solve that. And even if we come up with a solution, it is likely that most people will not accept it. That's a problem with philosophy. Whenever you have a great solution, most people believe in something else. Anyway, our feet are not on the firm ground here. We have a logical problem, how to define things within logic. We have problems within philosophy of logic. On the meta level, which kind of logic to choose, how to proceed, what strategy to take. And we have problems with that philosophers of language deal with. For example, modal notions, and some other disciplines that heavily depend on modal notions, like metaphysics and epistemology So I just wanted to give you a hint that something is going on here and that there are lots of philosophical discussions. And I hope that I was clear to convince you that we have a vague notion in our key definition, the definition of validity. You can have a look by yourself at other notions. They involve similar problems. Now, we had in the first chapter informal definitions of the basic logical notions. When we did truth tables, we had formal definitions within an artificial language SL. Do you see my notes? It should say truth functional properties now. Bold P is a meta variable. It says P is a tautology if and only if it has the value T for any truth value assignment. What is a truth value assignment? Well, this is one row in the truth table. It's one possible combination of T's and F's for all the atomic formula that we have. P is a contradiction if and only if not P is a tautology, which means that P has the value F for any truth value assignment, and so on. An argument is valid if and only if there is no truth value assignment on which all the premises are true and the conclusion false. All the problems are blown away. Nothing vague. So we do not define validity anymore in terms of impossibility. We defined it in terms of truth value assignments. Truth value assignments are things that are well defined. There are no problems about them. If you can teach a computer to do something, this means that you have good definitions. And we can, of course, have programs doing truth tables. Well, of course, this is an artificial language. It doesn't solve the original problem that I talked about. But you can see that within artificial languages, we can avoid some problems of natural language. And we hope that studying artificial languages, we will eventually benefit in some ways in understanding the natural language, besides having lots of useful applications for the artificial languages.